Welcome. Okay, let's go live. All right, now it's giving me grief here. All right. Not yet. So let's see. Okay, so let's turn LinkedIn off because it doesn't like it. So remove LinkedIn. Yes, remove it. Okay, so now we'll add LinkedIn and see if it'll go live. Okay, so there we go. And save changes. And all right. We should be live, everybody. So I apologize about the technical glitches. But anyways, I want to welcome you all to Bacon and Coffee. And let me get that up. And here we go. I'm going to start everybody with our 30-second countdown. Here we go. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Bacon and Coffee. I've got an amazing guest today. You're going to love it. But before we get started, we have to start with our caffeine and bovine intro. Here we go. Everybody, we got Mr. Chris Martinez in the house. Mr. Chris, how the heck are you and where the heck are you?
Good, man. I am live in Tijuana, Mexico, of all places. I don't know, am I your first guest from Tijuana, Mexico?
You are my first guest from Tijuana, Mexico. I've had international people, but this is the first one that's gone across the border. So what's the weather down there? Because in Chicago, man, it sucks.
I mean, I'm embarrassed to say it's cold. For us, it's cold. I think last night it got down into the high 30s.
Oh, that's cold.
But again, today I think it's going to get up to the low 70s.
Yeah,
I'm originally from Southern California, so like I have very thin skin when it comes to weather.
Yeah, I grew up in New York, and I remember when I was a little kid, we used to get we had a house that was on kind of like a mountain. We'd get two-story snow drifts. Literally, would be up to the second-story window. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what? I can't even remember. No, I can't remember. The last time I saw snow was when I was in Denver 2 or 3 years ago. And then prior to that, probably 15 years, I hadn't seen snow.
Yeah, it's it's like anything else. I mean, you see those commercials, the car commercials where the dad is standing out front and the kids drive up and they're making a snow machine in the middle of Southern California. You know, it's all about perspective, right?
Right.
But personally, I'd rather be where you are than where I'm at. So
come visit anytime you want.
Yeah. So today, peeps, we are going to be talking about digital marketing and digital agencies. And Chris, you are a brother from another mother because you wrote a book about two things that I absolutely love, which is creating a virtual agency and not wearing pants at work. Right.
Yes.
So tell me about the book first, man. What got you into the no pants thing? And please don't stand up in the middle of this. OK.
Well, it's cold, so I'm actually wearing pants today. My staff will tell you I never wear pants. I'm always in shorts. But getting back to your question, what inspired me to write the book? So obviously, we had this thing called COVID that happened in March of 2020, and it really shook the world, and everybody had to go virtual, right? I mean, like so many businesses were forced to close,
right?
And we kind of had to figure out how we would operate virtually. And my company, we had the benefit of having gone virtual multiple times before. For example, like we were moving our office and the construction took a lot longer. And so everybody was working from home. The nature of what we do too, like we can hire people anywhere across the world.
Right.
So we had this big advantage where we had the operational systems already in place. And what that did for us is we were able to just grow exponentially during COVID. While a lot of these companies were still trying to figure it out, you have a traditional business that's never used Zoom before. It's a big change. For us, it was kind of like second nature because we'd been doing it for so long. And I was like, man, I got to document this. I got to show people what it takes to actually build a virtual company. And we were talking earlier, it's hard for me to raise my left arm because I tore my tricep. So these are my quotes, the virtual company.
The air quotes.
Exactly. So the virtual company, it's really hard for a lot of businesses to be able to do that. So I basically took everything that I'd learned over the past 10 years, wrote it into a book, and basically gave people a playbook for how to grow their business from a virtual standpoint.
See, I love it. And so let me kind of add on to what you're talking about. I've been using GoToMeeting prior to getting into Zoom for probably about 10 years. And the biggest
Right.
advantage to me is I was constantly going out and doing quotes, right, for clients. I was meeting people, and I would drive downtown Chicago. I'd drive to Northbrook. I mean, it would be like a full half day to a full day just to go have a meeting. And half the time you'd show up to these meetings and they'd be talking about RFPs. They'd pick your brain, they'd take your ideas, and then they'd go find the lowest bidder and run away, right? And I just got tired of that. I just said, finally, it's like, if you want me to meet with you, we're going to do it over GoToMeeting. And so what it did, number one, if they were serious, they would show up. If they weren't serious, they wouldn't, right? So you knew what was happening. So I've been doing it for a long time. And then the context is, a lot of people have used this date, March 13th, 2020, right? Is when, the US basically shut down and everybody was scrambling. One of my biggest customers had 17 salespeople, 20 CSRs, service people, all this other stuff. They basically called me up and everybody said the same thing. It's like, dude, we got to stop. We have to figure out what the heck is going on. Yep. And they were spending all of their time trying to figure out how to do remote work, right? Because they had to move everybody to get them into their houses. They had to figure out, technology issues. They had to figure out server issues. They had to figure out a whole bunch of different things. So everybody who succeeded went through that transition. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so did you see that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of one of those things where like you were forced to do it. So you either adapt and survive or you just die, you just die off.
Right.
And we did see a lot of companies die off. Specific industries in general, like the buffet industry, wrecked. They don't have an option. One of my favorite restaurants was this place called Soup Plantation. I don't know if they have that in Chicago.
No,
but essentially it was a salad buffet.
I love those.
I love that place, but they were already in trouble prior to COVID, and as soon as that hit, they didn't have any cash, and so they went out of business. So the companies that could not adapt essentially died off really quickly, and then everybody who had, that had a little bit of cushion in terms of having cash on hand and could weather that storm for the first couple months, eventually they were able to figure it out, and I think it was a testament to the American people as to how quickly we can adapt to certain situations. Yep. And how quickly our economy can adapt when we're forced to. So that was really good. I mean, I saw that the people that were able to adapt, they actually did learn new skills and figured out how to rerun their company. So that was great.
Yeah. And then the second piece of that was, and I think you probably saw this as well as I did, is there were two camps. There was the camp that said, hey, we're not going to sell what we need to sell, so we're shutting down our entire marketing, our entire sales. We're going to try to figure this thing out. And they turned off the pipeline. The other companies actually turned the pipeline on after they got themselves settled, but actually amped it up a little bit. And what you saw was the people that stopped marketing started further and further going away because everybody was spending time online. And the companies that amped up their marketing and doing more online marketing were more visible and actually captured a greater market share. Did you see that as well?
100%. So here's what we saw on our side. So March, and I'll speak specifically about my business because we work with marketing agencies. So when that shutdown happened, you use the date March 13th. We lost about 18% of our revenue like overnight. And some of the agencies that we work with, one particular who was in Hawaii, who worked only with the tourism industry in Hawaii, they went out of business like immediately. And so we saw a dip in our revenue and things were really, really scary, to be honest. But we planned for the worst come April. Well, what happened in April is that business started to pick up again because people recognized like, holy crap, I need to listen to that digital marketing person who's been talking to me forever. Yeah, I need to get my stuff online. And so they started to actually invest in transforming their business and their lead generation, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And they started hiring agencies. And so then that trickled down to us and we started to get busy. So we basically made up all the lost revenue from March. We made that back up in April.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it was like rocket ship craziness. Like everybody who was able to survive those couple months, by summertime, everything started going crazy. And then our business started to grow
Awesome.
tremendously as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, the demand for marketing agencies by summer of 2020, if you were still standing, I mean, like the outlook was very, very bright.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. But again, you have to be able to adapt. I mean, because the marketing agencies, like anything else, I mean, they can get their people to work remotely, but I think that there was a scramble too for talent, right? I mean, that was the big thing for the digital agencies is they had to find people to match up what was going on. If you had a agency that was focusing 100% on radio and TV and banners for trade shows, they basically were shot in the foot, right?
Yeah, this is the catch-22 of COVID for the agency industry, and is what is fueling what I kind of consider the evolution of the marketing agency industry in general. Is that when COVID hit, and after those first few months, the demand for digital marketing expertise went up.
Right.
And so agencies started getting busy. Well, our biggest expense and the thing that really keeps everything running are people. You know,
Right.
Our biggest cost of goods is typically production labor. So as the demand grew and the agencies started getting busier, they needed people. And there's a shortage of talented marketing agency production labor, or just people in general who have marketing agency experience. So then the salaries started to go up. And this is what everybody's battling right now. It's one of the reasons why I say the agencies that succeed in 2022, they're going to master talent, not necessarily technology.
Right.
So the labor rates started going up, and people who were making, $40,000, $50,000, they started getting recruited away to other agencies, bigger agencies, as well as enterprise companies who have huge budgets. And they're saying, hey, you're making 50 grand. I'm going to give you 70 grand and I'm going to give you a $10,000 signing bonus.
Right.
And this is what we're in right now, is that those salaries have not capped out. They're going to probably continue to rise another 20%. So that's everybody's biggest challenge is like, okay, the demand went up, but our cost of goods is going up and we can only raise our prices so much. So, and if they're not raising their prices, then their margins are getting squeezed.
Right.
So they have to have a really good strategy. I think everybody's pretty much figured out how to operate remotely, but they have to have a really good strategy to acquire and retain the best talent.
Right.
That's going to help them deliver the goods to their customers, but also at the rates that they can afford, so they can keep those good margins.
Right. So we've seen a lot of things happen during the pandemic from a lot of different angles. But one of the major things that there are two core things that are basically hanging over our heads right now. One is supply chain. The other one is talent, right? I mean, those are the two big things that you have to be able to balance. And so we've seen, like you said, I mean, finding, retaining people. I mean, people getting headhunted away, all that other stuff has been a major challenge. But so why did you, when you put all this stuff together, I mean, who did you put your book together for? Who were you talking to and who's responded to it the most?
So we work specifically with marketing agencies. So almost all the content that I put out is for marketing agencies. And that's essentially who I was writing my book for. Are there other people that can take away, some big or get some big takeaways from the book? Absolutely. But specifically, everything that I write is for marketing agencies, because I think it's one of the hardest businesses that you could possibly do. Having owned a marketing agency myself and been in this business for over 10 years, it's unbelievably challenging. So that's who I write for. And what the biggest takeaways that I want people to get from my book are, why is it so difficult? Why is it so difficult to go remote? Why are some people incapable of operating remote? What does the future look like, and how am I going to be able to succeed, not just today, but in 2, 3, 10 years down the road? And then just some very practical things that you can implement in the business that's going to help you to be successful. For example, one of the things that we do at Dude is a daily deadline meeting. So we have a bunch of different teams that we call pods. I've got almost 100 employees now. And so each pod meets every morning, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, and they go through all the projects. It's like a stand-up meeting. And every team member has to say whether or not they are on track to hit the deadline. And it gives people the opportunity to ask for help if they need, and it gives them 15 minutes to connect with each other and feel like they're actually part of a team. And then if somebody's behind on a deadline or they're a little bit worried about hitting a deadline, then they can ask for help, and whoever is able to help them can stay on the call and give them guidance. That's something that we've been doing for a while, and it's super, super helpful. So that's a very, very practical thing that any company, but specifically marketing agencies, can take and implement that into their standard operating procedures so that we're delivering for the clients and making sure that we're hitting deadlines and everything is getting done on time and on budget.
Yeah, I love the concept. And basically what you're doing is taking the virtual world, bringing everybody together as if they're in the same room and giving them the same opportunity. So you're trying to transform basically digital into in-person as best you possibly can.
Absolutely.
Which is very cool. So as we go through the process here of what a digital agency needs to do, and I think a lot of this does apply to every company in one way, shape, or form. I mean, there's things that I just went to a live presentation yesterday about process. And the end result of the entire presentation, if you were basically to have a punchline at the end of it, it was all about getting your people and your processes aligned, right? That's the whole point. And really the key thing is the people. You can have the best processes in the world, but if people don't follow it or you don't have people to execute it, it doesn't mean anything.
You can have that all the time.
Yeah, you can have great people, right? But if there's no process in place, then they're frustrated, they're confused, so those two things work hand in glove. So when a digital agency comes to you guys, I'm assuming that they're coming to you because they have a pain point. We all understand, the pain point selling and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming that they have a pain point, but I'm guessing that more often than not, the pain point that they're feeling is not really the problem. It's a perceived problem, right?
Right.
So, and let me give one last example. I don't want to eat up a lot of time, but there's an example we talked about before we got on. And that was, I was working for an agency. I worked for, a standard, traditional agency in Chicago after I left a corporate gig, which I did not play well in that sandbox. I couldn't play there. And they hired me because of my creative abilities, and I ran my own businesses and, I knew stuff. And they bring me in as their digital marketing guy, right? So I come in, I start working with them, working on websites, Google ads, all that fun stuff, everything that they needed. And then we got this one opportunity to go present to Career Builder, which was a monster.com competitor. Okay, this is back in the 90s or early 2000s. And so we went and gave this presentation. And when we showed up, they had people on staff. Their main thing that they've done for years was radio and TV ads and print, right? And digital was new to them. But what the company wanted is they wanted a new digital strategy. And these guys spent 45 minutes on radio, TV, and print and gave me 15 minutes to walk in. Of course, we didn't get the job, and I ended up getting fired because we didn't get the job. And it's like, seriously, how can you sell a digital strategy in 15 minutes? You should have been the opposite, right?
Right.
So there's usually there's a trigger going on that I think this kind of aligns with what you're doing, is getting people to realize, what the perceived problem is, and then we'll talk about what the real problem is. So can you kind of dig into that a little bit?
Yeah. So really quickly, for those that don't know what Dude does, we've always kind of been known as the outsourcing guys. And one of our, or the things that put us on the map is that I was able to find talent down in Mexico, specifically in Tijuana, Mexico. Because I was able, I moved when I had my own agency, I moved my operations to Tijuana, Mexico, because I was living in San Diego back in 2015. And then after that, Dude became this outsourcing company that helped agency staff. And that's still what we do. It's a big part of what we do. And the main thing that people come to us for is they say, I have all these projects. I'm way behind schedule.
Mm-hmm.
It's preventing me from being able to sell more projects. I need you to give me some designers, developers, project management, I need you to help me staff, right? So that's the problem that they believe that they have. And it's a real problem. I mean, they are backlogged, but I like to look at like, how did we get to this point? Like, why did you sell a bunch of projects, and then why were these projects not able to get fulfilled on time? And then what's the impact that that has on the business? So essentially what we do is we look at the projects that they have now, we start working with them, and then we start looking at the standard operating procedures, the SOPs and the processes that they have.
Gotcha.
Most of the time, the agencies don't have any processes.
Right.
So we have to actually go in and identify, okay, what are the processes that you actually have? We do this thing called a process map. It's essentially just a flow chart. We make it on Lucid chart. And it's like a visual representation of how things are supposed to go. You would be shocked as to how many agencies have never actually done this before. So as we're laying things out in a visual format, people are like, wow, like I didn't recognize that that's actually what we're doing. Why are we doing that? Is there a way to make that more efficient? So over time, we start to improve their processes and help them with that. And then the third thing, this is like the third big thing, is just identifying budgets. So I like to ask people when they say, hey, I want to scale, I need to grow my team. I ask them, what do you have in the budget? Because the budget is really going to dictate who we can hire and where we can hire. Because we all need to be maintaining a healthy margin. And for those that don't know, I encourage everybody to have a 70% gross margin, meaning that if you sell a project for 10 grand or 100 grand, you need to be able to get that project done for 30% of what you sold it for. Now, there's a lot of people who say, anywhere from 50 to 70% gross margin. I say 70%. The reason I say that is because it's very common that a project will go longer than what we expected. And agency people are the nicest people on earth. And oftentimes we are not billing for additional revisions or any little like project scope changes. And that eats into our margin. So at 70% gross margin, even if your project goes a little bit off the rails, you will still be able to make money. So that gives you a little bit of wiggle room for any operational hiccups that happen. So we have to look at the budget, and then once we establish the budgets, then we can identify, where we're going to go and look for people. And the beauty of what we have now is that, you can get access to talent that you didn't even know existed before, like Mexico, for example, or South America. So those are kind of like the three key things that I want agencies to be aware of is, okay, let's get these projects done. Let's look at the inefficiencies that we have in the processes. And then now let's figure out how we're going to scale our operations profitably by establishing budgets and then filling those gaps as we grow and not exceed what we have in the budget.
And so you basically talked about a handful of things, and I think we'll dig into this a little bit further on when we get into the solution and the process. But one of the key points that you're bringing up that I think it's uber important is number one, it's what you sell and who you sell to is really important, right? So if you are selling web services, let's bring that, just to say websites, okay, what does web services mean? So you've got a guy on staff that is a web guy, right? And he can design websites. Nowadays, with the technology and the cloud and the things that are changing, the guy that was doing web in 2000 that was hand coding everything in TypePad, is no longer the web guy that is going to be able to integrate Zapier into WordPress, into Salesforce, into Drupal, into, Microsoft Dynamics. I mean, the world is changing around us so fast. So I think one of the things that people tend to do when they're creating, their business is they tend to sell to their strengths without looking at what the market is there. So they're trying to squid that, basically squish a square peg into a round hole. Would you agree with that? Have you seen that a lot?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have seen that. At the end of the day, I think that the purpose of marketing, and I'm probably not the first person to say this, is that we're here to drive more leads and engagements and
Hmm.
ultimately increase revenue, right?
Right.
That's the whole purpose of what we do. The different tools that you use to get there, the media that you use to get there, it changes, right?
Right.
Most of the marketing agencies that are still standing today have some foothold in an industry or with a technology, and they can get results,
Hmm.
because the ones who couldn't get results, they died off pretty quickly in 2020.
Right.
And so now it's a matter of, okay, so we can get really good results for our clients. We know
Hmm.
what's working, and how are we going to be able to grow the company so that we're still making money? That's, I
Hmm.
think, the biggest challenge that marketing agencies are facing right now.
I would have to agree. So we've talked about the perceived problem, where they think the problem is.
Mhm.
I'm going to try to summarize this, and maybe you can add to it. I
Sure.
think the real problem that the agencies have, number one, obviously, is a people problem and a process problem, right?
Hmm.
The real problem is they don't have the processes set up, and they also don't have the people set up to fulfill those processes. They may have holes in those gaps. And so the question becomes, with part of this, and I think it's kind of dig into the solution, is how do how do you as a company, or how does the company itself identify their processes in a way that's going to help them realize that, hey, I need a full-time employee to do this, but I can bring in a project person to come and fill in these gaps at this time. I
Yeah.
think the solution is understanding the scope of what you need, and then how to fill the gaps as they come in. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I definitely agree. I'll give you an example. Actually, let me frame this so that everybody can understand. Like, the agency owners in general,
Hmm.
or the first core team members, are typically what we call unicorns, in the sense that they can do a bunch of different things, right?
Right.
They're good at design. They're good at, they've got some background in development. They can write copy. They know how to run ads.
Hmm.
Like, we are the unicorns, for example. And so when we're building out processes that are supposed to help us scale, we build out processes where you can only fill those roles with unicorns.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like saying, I'm not a basketball guy, so I'm going to use an older reference, but it's like saying, like, I'm going to win every NBA championship. I just need Michael Jordan on my team. I need Kobe Bryant. I need Shaquille O'Neal, and
Right.
I need three of those people. I
Right.
need three of each, right? They don't exist. And this is the challenge that agency owners have, is that we're building out processes where it's impossible to fill those roles.
Hmm.
And we don't recognize it because we think that everybody is a unicorn like us.
Right. And let
Because
me
maybe,
jump
yeah.
in on that one point. And I think the biggest problem is that, even when they rate the processes, they rate the processes that they know, right?
Hmm.
It's one of the things that I say about being a marketing person, the hardest marketing to do is on your own, right? To
Yeah. Oh,
market
of
yourself,
course.
you know. So when you're doing an SOP, when you're putting together the processes, you're doing it the way that you have done it, right?
Hmm.
And that's what you know. You only know that scope. So sometimes you need that outside perspective to say, yes, you can do it that way, but let me show you there's another way to do this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually why we like doing the process maps for our
Hmm.
agencies,
Yeah, makes sense.
because it's a very simple way to look at what's actually happening. I'll tell you a story. So we were working with this agency. They've been around for, I want to say, like 40 years. And
Hmm.
they're one of those agencies that had gone from traditional, print, and then they started integrating digital. And they have a really good niche. I believe it's like consumer packaged goods. So they're working with very big clients.
Hmm.
And we start going through their process map. And I think it was me and two other team members on that call, and we're mapping things out on our, little lucid chart.
Hmm.
And then after they get through this very, very complex design process, they essentially had one step that they were doing where they were kind of changing the entire scope of the project. I can't remember what they called it, but it was like a development reassessment, essentially. So they would get all these design mock-ups approved, and they would start right before they were going to start development. They would have a call with the client, and then they would say, okay, we just approved all these designs. What are the things that you want to change? So that was completely like throwing off any sort of like operational processes that we wanted to have, because we just chucked all those design mockups that we created. And then they never recognized how that was creating these future bottlenecks, because they never looked at the project like that. They never looked at the process like that, I should say. And so I asked them, I was like, hey, like, why are you guys doing this? What's the reason? And nobody had a good answer. So they were like, okay, yeah, we need to either throw this out or move it around in the process so that we're not creating scope creep for ourselves.
That's or chaos.
Yeah, it was chaos. I mean, I look at it, I'm like, you're losing a lot of money because of this.
Right.
But yes, all of the above: scope creep, chaos, losing profitability, and nobody had a good answer. And it's just one of those things where like most agency people are not really process driven. Like I'm kind of a weirdo like that. I enjoy process. The way that my brain is wired, I'm obsessed with efficiency. So I enjoy looking at all the little steps and basically like questioning, why are we doing certain things? Who is doing this? How long is that supposed to take? And then I'm also looking big picture, and I'm thinking about, okay, so who has to fill this role, and how available are these people? If we build the most, you mentioned this earlier, actually, we can build the most amazing process ever, but if we can't find people at scale to do the work, it's not a good process. And we have to figure it, retool it so that we can actually staff this process that we've created.
Yep. And I'm gonna put in a commercial right here, and the commercial is Denise from Houston says hi. By the way, I don't know if you know Denise, or it's Bridget Denise, as it says, aka Denise. But anyways, that was a while ago. Just wanted to say hi and recognize you. Thanks for coming on, putting in a comment. So you've really laid it out in a way that I think makes a lot of sense. And I think the key thing that we have to do now is start to identify the steps, right? So, and I'm 100% with you. I am I'm a unicorn number one, but the other thing is I'm a process guy, right? I am such a systems geek, right? I like systems. Systems are, they're repeatable, they're measurable, they're pliable. There are things that you can do, right? And so the better your system, the better you're going to see the results. And again, when you're talking about hiring talent, like what you guys do, you're finding ways to plug people in to the system that's been created. So as a unicorn, as somebody who is running an agency, you've got to identify, okay, where do I need things to get fixed? But I think everything starts with from the top, right? In order to create the process, you have to identify what's the end goal. And let me give you one more specific thing that I talk about. And I've written blogs about this, and my degree is in electronics, right? So I'm an audio guy. I grew up on audio production technology. And in order to make a system work, you don't start at the source, you start at the speaker, right? If something's not working and you're not getting audio out of a speaker, the first thing you do is switch the speakers, right? And then the next thing, so if that doesn't solve the problem or change anything, then you change the wire, then you change the amplifier, and then you change the wire there, and then you change the source. You've got to go backwards to figure out the problem. So I think
100%
in what you do, you first got to identify what's the outcome that you're trying to get, and then kind of build everything back from that, and then then put it on fast forward and see if everything works. Would you agree with that?
I agree 100%. One of the most challenging this is one of the reasons why I say that running an agency is so difficult, is because we don't have just one speaker. There's so many moving parts in working with an agency, right? We have to create the deliverable. It has to get the results from the client. We have to manage the relationship with the customer. We have to manage the team that's actually doing the work. So you have all these things that we're trying to coordinate. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's so hard for agencies to be able to do this, is because there's just so many moving parts, and every moving part is an opportunity to actually lose money.
Right.
So yes, I agree 100%. We have to look at the end result. The end result is we have to create the deliverable for the client. It has to get them results. So that's like end result one. We have to make sure that we're making money, because a marketing agency, the business itself, this is part of the evolution of the agency space, is we're not here just to do creative stuff. We're here to build a business that actually provides the life that we want.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we just want the client to get rich. It's not that we are just hiring people and we want all those people to have an amazing living. We, as the agency owner, need to get paid too. And the business needs to be profitable. The business needs to be worth something so that if we want to do an exit one day, we can actually sell it. And we're not going to have a $5 million agency that has zero profitability and we end up getting paid $500,000 for that agency.
Right.
We work too damn hard for that to happen. So that's the second part. And then, of course, the relationships with the customers. We have to make sure that our clients' expectations are met, that they're getting a solid return on investment, and that everybody's winning. I mean, that's one of the beauties of what we do, is that it truly is a win-win organization or an industry where everybody has to be succeeding.
So what's the first step that they've got to look at? We understand the outcome, but what's the first thing that they need to do if they're going to go down this road of trying to build their agency? What do you suggest they look at?
Oh, man, there's a few different ways that you could do it. I take the least fun approach, and the least sexy approach is we got to look at the numbers. We have to look at the numbers. Simple thing to do is just look at what your gross margin is. So there's essentially 6 main reasons why an agency is not hitting their financial goals. So like if you're an agency owner and you're not making the type of money that you want, if your company is not profitable, like if your net income is not at least 20%, and you're not personally not making the kind of money that you want, there's typically 6 reasons, and I'll give them to you right now. So the first one, the most common, is that your cost of goods is too high. So just to define what is cost of goods for us, it's typically the labor that goes into completing projects, to doing deliverables, right? So if we're building websites, it's the designers, the developers, the copywriters, the project managers. As I mentioned before, that number, that cost of goods should be 30%. And there's software that goes into that as well. But that cost of goods should be 30%, leaving you with a gross margin of 70%. That's the number one reason why my agencies are not successful financially. The second one, and this doesn't happen very often, but then our operating expenses are too high. The most common one is that we're paying ourselves or some key team members, we're just paying too much for what our revenue is.
Or you still have that office space in that big office building with
literally
the big...
just about to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. We've all been there to those agencies. That's all, I mean,
you think that it's going to help you win clients, but I think that the past couple of years have proven that we really don't need that massive expense to be able to win new business and maintain relationships with customers, and definitely not to work with employees. So yeah, that massive rent that you have, we don't need that. But operating expenses is usually the second thing that we look at, or it's the second thing that we look at. The next one, and this is very common, is when you see peaks and valleys in sales. So like if your sales go up one month because you're chasing new business, and now you get stuck in this fulfillment trap and you stop prospecting, and then you finish the projects that you have, and guess what? We don't have anybody in the pipeline. And then so you got to scramble like crazy, get new projects. And then when you have that inconsistency with your sales, it's very, very hard to grow the business, because you've got expenses, and it's just, you need that predictability in your new revenue.
And that's business 101. I talk about this from a marketing standpoint. What I say to people is that when you are the busiest, that's when you should be marketing the hardest, because otherwise you do automatically, and people don't see that. It's like, you hit the gas and you take it up, and you hit the gas and take it up, and you can't see it because you're so busy working that you don't see that you're not spending enough time marketing yourself. And there are two ways to deal with that. Number one, you have people in house that do it, right? Or number two, you hire an agency to market your agency. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And like another common thing that happens that kind of prevents sales is when, everybody on the operations team is slammed with projects, and they're like, no, you can't go out and sell more. Like, we can't take on another client. So you have to have a strategy in place to be able to ramp up your labor as well. So anyways, the third thing was sales. The fourth one, and this is something that I'm super passionate about, is churn rate. So if you're an agency and your churn rate, and you're selling monthly recurring services, if your churn rate's over 3%, you got a problem.
Mhm.
It depends on what your offering is, how big the agency is, what type of clients you have. But typically, you should not be churning clients at more than 3%. Let's just be very clear as how we measure churn rate. How many clients did we start the month off with, and how many did we lose,
Mhm.
regardless of how many clients we brought in? So if you start the month with 100 customers and you lose 3, that means that your churn rate is 3%.
Mhm.
It's very important that you calculate that number correctly. You can also deduce your customer lifetime value based on your churn rate and your average revenue per unit. But churn rate in general, you have to manage your churn rate. If you're churning clients like crazy, it's typically because one, they don't feel like they're getting the results that you promised them. And I
Mhm.
emphasize the word feel because it's a very emotional decision to work with an agency. You really do have to invest in managing the relationship and building that trust with the client.
Mhm.
Because what happens when you bring on a new customer? The day that you sign them up, they're thinking to themselves, man, did I make the right decision? Am I going
Right.
to get burned like I did with that other agency that promised me the world and didn't give me anything? So there's all this buyer remorse. The
Right.
second thing that happens is they have your competitors in their ear, cold calling them, saying, what are they getting you? I can do it cheaper. I can do it better. I can get you better results every single day.
Mhm.
5 times a day, they're getting people calling them that. If you don't have a solid relationship with that client, meaning that they know who you are, they
Mhm.
can speak to you at any moment, they know exactly who to communicate with, and they actually trust you. They feel like you are a part of their company.
Mhm.
If you don't have those 3 things into place, then you have a very good chance of losing that customer, even if technically you're getting them good results. So you have to manage that churn rate. It's very, very important. And then the fifth thing is going to be the what you're charging. So we call it average revenue per unit. So whatever you're charging, like you can be the best, you can have the greatest gross margin, you can have the greatest operational expenses, net income, you can have the best sales. You're hitting your sales targets, your churn rate is great, but if you're charging too little, there's never going to be enough money left over for you, and there's probably not going to be enough money to reinvest back into the company so that you can truly scale.
Right.
Our costs as agencies are going up. It's just the fact of them. I mean, like the costs in general are going up.
Right.
Everybody is hearing about inflation and how it's, the inflation is up the highest since what, like the 1970s.
Mhm.
So that is a real thing. Costs are going up. So you have to manage that average revenue per unit. You have to make sure that you are charging enough so that you're also building a business that has the money to be able to pay you and grow.
Mhm.
And the last one is the leadership team. So most of us started out, we kind of are accidental entrepreneurs. Like I can count on one hand the number of agency owners that have built a really solid agency that went to formal business school. Like
Mhm.
we just didn't do that, right? Like I didn't go to business. Actually, I've never taken a formal college level business course. I've taken tons of courses through other entrepreneurs that I know, but I've never taken a collegiate business or entrepreneurship course. And ironically, I was part of a panel at my university, UC Santa Barbara. They have an entrepreneurship program that's like volunteer, and I was one of the mentors. So
Mhm.
while I've never learned anything formally, I was kind of teaching university students. But because of this deficiency, we don't know how to build out our different departments, and we don't know when we need to release control and hire somebody to take over something like customer experience,
Mhm.
like like managing our finances, hiring a CFO, how to hire an operations manager, how to hire a chief operating officer. We don't know how to build out these different departments. And you, as the owner, are always going to be the bottleneck. So you need to be able to recognize, hey, I'm a bottleneck here. This is why we're struggling. I need to go out and I need to fill somebody to be on my leadership team that can start making better decisions and that can get to this work that I've been putting off.
Right. And so there's so much in that piece that you just talked about. I could go off on tangents all over the place, and I don't want to do that because I want to keep us focused. Um, the first thing that I see with what you're talking about is kind of the last thing is if it's all in gross, if your agency is not making enough money, if your business is not making enough money, the last thing you want to do is go hire a CFO, right?
Right.
And CFO is like, okay, this guy's going to come in and basically do my QuickBooks is the way that people look at it. Like, no, 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 no.
Right.
That's not what a CFO does,
Absolutely not.
And the problem that I think people have is they don't educate themselves as to what roles these people play and what value they can bring in, right?
Mhm.
So, you may go out and say, okay, I need a designer and grab a designer, but you need to, in order to grow your agency, you have to be making enough money to be able to get people in place of quality who can actually help you manage the business better so that you have the data and you have the structure and you have the process and everything with you that is going to help you grow it even further, right? And maintain it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I mean, like if you're under 5 million in revenue, you probably don't need a full-time CFO. But here's the
right.
beauty of what we do is that managing and understanding these numbers, it's not rocket science. Like we have one of our clients, insanely hardworking woman. She's just a badass. Like I'm inspired by her every single day.
Mm-hmm.
We helped her take her agency essentially from 0 in monthly recurring revenue to 50K in monthly recurring revenue with incredibly healthy margins in 6 months. And she has a bookkeeper. So we essentially showed her, these are the numbers that you need to hit. These are the budgets. These are the KPIs. These are the financial metrics that you need to manage like crazy. Do
Mm-hmm.
not exceed these numbers. And so she told her bookkeeper, who she probably has on, $500 a month or something like that, and said, hey, I need you to, take my QuickBooks and I need you to make sure and give me reports as to how we're doing. These are the goals.
Mm-hmm.
So she was able to look at the numbers and then make decisions based on what she sees in the numbers. I'm terrible at gathering the numbers. My wife, who manages our finances, she's amazing at gathering the numbers. I'm
Mm-hmm.
really good at interpreting the data. I think most entrepreneurs in general, we're very good at solving problems. The challenge with the agency world is that we typically don't have the right data, as you mentioned, so we don't know which problems to solve.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So then once you have that information as an agency owner, you can then interpret the data very easily. Because like I said, this stuff isn't rocket science.
Right.
And then we can create a plan so that little by little, we start chipping away at these problems. And then at the end of the year, we have the business that we've always wanted. And we have the lifestyle that we've always wanted because we have the right team members in place and we're making the type of income that we want. But literally, it starts with like figuring out what it is that you need to do. And then you use your entrepreneurial skills to create a very simple and realistic plan.
Mm-hmm.
So like easiest one, right? Our cost of goods is too high. Our gross margin isn't where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see if we can move that number 1.5% a month.
Right.
You do that, and at the end of the year, you'll have improved your cost of good, your gross margin by over 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. And you've nailed a couple other things, and there's an example I want to give, and this is something I see a lot of, and it's what I call in the world of agency vanity metrics. What a lot of companies tend to do, and I'm not going to say a lot of companies, but I've seen companies do this, is they come in and they teach the end client that, your KPI is more traffic to your website means you're getting more leads and you're getting more business. So what happens is that, the businesses are trained that all they need to look at is hits on the website and then number of leads that they're getting, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times they're looking at the wrong KPIs. The real KPI should be not how many hits you're getting to the website, is how many quality people are having conversations with your sales teams.
Yeah,
Because you get
absolutely.
leads all day long, right? But the leads are cold calls because if somebody comes in and says, I'm interested, and then somebody's got to nurture them. And it's like, they're kicking tires and they're price shopping and they're doing all these other things, and they're not understanding, what we really need is to get a conversation between either the owner or the salesperson with somebody who has, the time, the money, and the desire to make change, right? That's the biggest thing that we do as marketers. We're change agents. We help people think differently, look at things differently, solve problems, and ultimately marketing it has one thing and one thing only it should do, and that is drive more revenue. And I think you
Yep.
touched on that before, right? So, again, it's the cobbler whose kids have holes in their shoes, right?
Yep.
We are the same way, right? We tend to look at the KPIs and saying, well, wait a minute, my revenue's way up, but they're not measuring, what's my cost of goods sold? What is my, distributed profits? I mean, I've been working with the same accountant for 25 years, and that's because every time I go in, they keep teaching me this stuff,
Yep. Absolutely.
And so in order for us, so that, we're looking at a handful of different things. We're trying to buoyance our business big enough so we can get more people that can help us make it bigger and so on and so forth. But we tend to be our worst enemies.
Yeah.
So how, if somebody works with the system that you're talking about and reads your book and maybe even hires your company, when do they know success? What is the outcome? What's the KPI for them that says, you know what? We're kind of, now we're cranking on all cylinders. Now things are working. Give me a success story. Tell me about an outcome that really excites you.
So this is the interesting thing, because I don't ever tell anybody what success is to them, because everybody is different, right? So for me, I love to travel. A definition of success for me at this point in my life is that we get to travel, at least once a month. Last month, we took a trip to Puerto Vallarta last minute. In 2 weeks, we're going to Miami, and then we're going up to New York for a long weekend. Like these things are part of how I define success. So each individual has their version of success, and that might change over time. At the end of the day, though, I think most people's definition, or most people feel happy and fulfilled when 4 areas of their life are working in what's the word I'm looking for?
Concert.
Yes, when they're all working synchronicity. That's the word I was looking for. When the 4 things are working in synchronicity. So one is your physical health. Your physical health. I mean, like I don't know if you read this in my bio, but my dad passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2007. He died 3 days before my 27th birthday. He was diagnosed and he was dead in a month.
Yeah, pan-can's bad, man. I've had relatives die from it. It's nasty.
It's horrible, right? And so, like, if you get sick like that, nothing is more important than your health. So when your physical health is going well, then to me, that's when people feel happy. Like that's one element for feeling happy and fulfilled and successful. Second one is your mental health. Everybody's mental health has been challenged over the past 2 years. It's been very difficult. And actually right now, I'm sure everybody's mental health is being tested as well because of all the crap that's going down in Ukraine. And if we're going to be, bombed to smithereens in the next month. But your mental health and being able to manage your emotions and your stress is very, very important. The third thing are relationships, right? You have to have healthy relationships. You have to have people around you that love you, that care about you, that you can rely on, that they can rely on you. That's very, very important. And the fourth thing is the business. So if and your business success can be anything to you, right? I personally feel like everybody deserves the kind of money that they want to make, whether that be $90,000 a year or $900 million a year, whatever that is to you. I want you to be able to go out and do that. If you have all 4 of those things in alignment and everything is working well, you are typically a happy, successful, or you feel successful, and you're a very fulfilled individual. That's my personal belief. And we've chosen to run marketing agencies as the way that we're going to build our business and fulfill ourselves through that. So whatever that financial, number is for you, that's between you. And like, I'm not going to tell you whether or not your number is too small. But I do want you to be able to build the lifestyle that you want, right? So like if one of your goals is to have a bunch of real estate investments, right? We just bought our first real estate investment this past year. Like if that's something that you want to do, you have to make a certain amount of money. If you want to be able to send your kids to an Ivy League college one day, you have to be able to make a certain amount of money to be able to save for that. If you want to be able to go on vacations, or, one of my clients, one of his dreams was to take his father on a week-long trip to Alaska to go fishing, right? Because they're outdoorsmen. And he was able to do that last year. Like imagine if you could do that twice a year. The same guy, he's a retired police officer, and he started a marketing agency, and he works specifically with former law enforcement and first responders who are now getting into entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
I said, man, because he was kind of like struggling with this. He's like, we have a mission, but I'm not really passionate about it. I'm like if you had all the money in the world, what's something that you would love to do? He's like, I would love to be able to spend more time with first responders and law enforcement and just talk to them about the power of entrepreneurship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And starting this second career. It's like, if you generate more revenue and more profit and more income for yourselves, imagine if you could do that just for 5 more hours a month.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what would that mean to your life? He's like, oh my God, it would be so exciting. So now he has this new mission, right? So whatever that mission is for you, it does take money most of the time to be able to accomplish that. So let's establish the plan as to how we're going to leverage our agency, build the team, build the profitability, build the processes, like get everything in alignment so that we can go out and live the life that we've always wanted. And personally, that I think that you deserve. It just takes like having the right plan, and then, the right plan, the right people, right processes, everything will fall into place.
Absolutely. All right, dude, can you believe that we've been talking for almost an hour?
I know, this went super fast.
That's the whole point. Yeah, because it's good convo, and it's stuff that I think that people definitely need to think about and look at. So I've got 2 questions for you for the very, very end. These are quick. So as we close out, the first one is, why do you spell dude wrong? Because in my world, dude is spelled D-E-W-D, right? Dude. And what does dude mean?
So I love telling the story because I had a marketing agency and we'd grown. We had a couple of 100 clients on retainer, and it was the goal that I always wanted, but it wasn't as fun once I got to that point. And I was like, you know what? I've got this amazing team down in Mexico. And I was thinking, like, do I close down the agency and start something completely new? And I had listened to a podcast of my friend Russ Perry. I didn't know him at the time, and how he had started Design Pickle, and they do unlimited graphic design. So that was my first thing. I was like, man, what if we worked with marketing agencies and we gave them access to this talent pool down in Mexico that they didn't even know existed? We have a Mexican company, so we can do the payroll for them and everything. And I was literally sitting in my friend's beach house down in Mexico, and I'm like, what do I call this thing? And I remembered this book that I'd read like in 2008 or something, called Selling the Invisible by this guy named Harry Beckwith. I remember nothing from that book except that he said that Americans love companies with the ooh sound, like Uber, Google, YouTube. I'm like, so like that stuck with me. And I was like, I've always wanted to start a company with the ooh sound. I'm like, what can I call this? Well, I'm from Southern California, and we say dude every other word.
Right.
That's where it came from. I got a dude, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, it's got to mean something. So I say digital updates done by experts. That's where it came from. And then here's the funny thing. So I was like, I had the whole story mapped out, and digital updates done by experts, thinking that everybody's going to ask me what it means. We go to our first conference, Traffic and Conversion Summit. We got a booth.
Yep.
At the last minute, I got this hat. And I'm wearing the hat on the convention floor. And literally from 50 yards away, I hear some random guy go, dude. And then I was like, we don't need to use digital updates done by experts anymore. And we've just been dude ever since.
That's awesome. Well, first and foremost, you have to know I'm an acronym junkie. And the whole concept of BACON stands for Building Authentic Connections Online Networking.
I love that. I had no idea.
Yeah, but it's the same thing, man. Nobody cares about that. All they want to know is bacon, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, Chris, this has been just a blast, number one. Number two, amazing. You came on and dropped just amazing, sizzling hot bacon knowledge bombs on my peeps. If people wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you and or your book?
So you can go to dudeagency.io if you want to learn more about what we do. You can get a free copy of my book. I'll give you the PDF. Just go to neverwearpantsagain.com, put in your email, and I think your name too. We'll give you a PDF copy of the book. You can buy a physical copy of the book. Just go to Amazon. And then if you want to get in touch with me, I have no problem giving out my email, chris@dudeagency.io. Happy to connect with anybody who's out there, specifically like if you're a marketing agency and you are struggling with things like staffing, operations, profitability, you're not making the kind of money that you want to make, but you believe in the agency. And one of the keys is that you have to be doing over $500,000 in revenue. We want to help you go from good to great and help you build that life that you deserve. So feel free to reach out. If you're not in that range, just talk to me. I talk to anybody. It's the hardest business. I think it's the hardest business that you could run. So if you need an ally or just somebody to give you a pep talk, reach out.
Excellent. Hey, Chris, man, this has been amazing. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, we're going to leave everybody with our bacon and coffee close. Have a great day. We'll see you guys next week.